Writers, if you are going to stay active in the writing life long term, there's one thing you're going to have to come to grips with, and that's the fact that it's so easy to burn out. And one thing that can help you get ahead and stay ahead of creative burnout is committing to cultivating creative inspiration. I'm Coach Ruth. I'm a writer and an author coach, and I can teach this because I've experienced it. I went through about a 10-year period in the past where I wrote 5 plays and 9 books in quick succession, then published a bunch of them, and then felt like I never wanted to write another word in my entire life. And I was experiencing creative burnout. So now I intentionally build into my creative life. I consider it part of my work week to cultivate creative inspiration. So today we'll talk about 6 steps to stay creatively inspired and prevent long-term burnout. This matters because continual output requires continual input. So on the wall behind me, I have my running medals. I love to run. And right now my race is the half marathon. Anything longer than that makes me cry. Anything shorter than that doesn't feel like I did much. So the half marathon is my current race. And when I'm in training cycles, if I'm going to run 10 miles on a Saturday as a training run, I need to fuel well throughout the week. I need to eat good food, lots of protein, some carbs. I need to sleep well. I need to stay hydrated because I can't have that level of output without consistent input. And the same thing is true creatively. Your brain needs the right fuel in order to operate well. So continual output requires continual input. Otherwise, you'll burn out. Burnout is easier to prevent than it is to recover from. Burnout recovery can take weeks, months, years sometimes, depending on how badly you've burnt out and who you are as a person and how you are affected by these things. So it's easier to prevent than to recover from. So if you're watching this video today and you're in burnout recovery, there are some things here for you. What I really would like to do today is reach people who are in their preventative maintenance stage to help them be better at preventing creative burnout, recognizing signs of it, and staying ahead of it. And you might be here because you're reacting to burnout. You might be here because you're being proactive. Either way, there's something here for you. So if you're burnt out or find yourself in a burnout stage, there are some questions you can ask. Do I know how I got here? What contributed to this state of burnout? Sometimes it is the work. Sometimes you hyperfixate on the work. This is me. I'm guilty of this. You stay so fixated on the work for so long that you forget to take the breaks that you need. But that might not be true. Sometimes there are factors in our wider lives that contribute to creative burnout. We may be dealing with really heavy emotional situations in our lives. You may be dealing with family situations that are using up most of your emotional and mental resources, and there's nothing left over for creative work, but you try to do the creative work anyway. So there are a lot of different factors that can lead to burnout. So when you experience burnout, it's actually helpful to sit down and think, do I know how I got here? Write that down. And if you stay in the creative life long enough, you may start recognizing patterns and cycles that you can stay ahead of. What have I been doing well and not doing? You know, there are mornings I go out to run and I just have no energy and I think, well, I only slept 4 hours last night. No wonder. So I don't beat myself up. I just plod through the miles thinking training is training. I don't have a lot in my gas tank today because I was up late last night. So if I know what I've been doing and not doing creatively, sometimes if I know how I got here and say, okay, when I get here, it's because I haven't been doing this. So I need to do those things to help recover. Intentionality does factor into burnout recovery, any kind of recovery. If you've been ill, and you know you're recovering from illness, you will intentionally make choices to help you recover faster. You'll rest more, go to bed earlier, eat more healthy food or nutritious foods, perhaps. And so if you know you're in burnout recovery, you can make intentional choices that help you recover more quickly. But I would like to speak mostly today to those who are trying to be proactive to avoid burnout recovery. First question you need to ask yourself is, do I know what fuels my creativity? This can take some time to figure out, but when you feel bursts of creative inspiration, it's worth asking, what fueled this? What was I just doing in the past hours or the past days or the past weeks? Personally, I'm going to show you later on in the presentation some things that fuel my creativity. I learned this over a matter of years, just watching patterns in my own creative life. If you know what feeds your creativity, you can intentionally not just seek it out when you're starting to feel burnt out, but building it into your ongoing schedule so that you're being fueled creatively throughout the weeks, months, and years. Where and what do you need to feel the most inspired? This will vary so widely depending on your personality, your interests, your tastes. What pursuits in your life are life-giving? And how can you make sure to build those in? There are a few things that I do, even though I don't find them immediately creatively inspiring. I stay involved in those pursuits because I find them life-giving. They bring me joy. And writing brings me joy, but it also brings a fair bit of angst. So I need regular rhythms in my life and my routine that just flat out bring me joy. 3 general principles to consider. First, know what fuels you versus what drains you. If you're engaging mostly in draining activities rather than fueling activities, you know what's going to happen. You must create intentionality around staying fueled. I actually build this into my work week. I have a certain day of the week right now that I'm half a day in the office, and the other half of the day, I'm not off. I don't say I get off early on that day. The second half of that day is for creative enrichment. I fuel myself intentionally. I build it into my work schedule because it is part of my work, just like sleeping well and eating well are part of my training sessions for running. I also investigate areas in my life in which I need balance. I am an all or nothing person. I have something called all or nothing brain, not the clinical term, but I need to make sure that when something catches my attention and my interest or my passion, I don't flat out put my whole life into it. That is what happened when I got burnt out the first time. So investigate areas in your life where you may need to add some balance. We talk a lot about the work-life balance. I do think that's good, but I think there's an extra element that we should consider as creatives. Rest, work, and leisure, not just work and life, but I found that as a creative, breaking this down into rest, work, and leisure is very helpful. We know what rest is, right? This is a cease of movement from work in order to relax, refresh, or recover. Rest is passive. So you might take a nap, you might watch TV, you might read a book. That's not rest for some people. It is for others. It just depends on you. But whatever you find restful, you need to have restful periods in each week. Then there's work, obviously, mental and physical effort. This is active. So we have rest, which is passive, and we have work, which is active. But I would like to invite you to consider leisure. Leisure has been one of my best assets in making sure that I don't burn out again. Leisure is free time that I use for enjoyment, and this could be active or passive. Leisure activities are not complete rest, but they are restful activities that get me out of the office, up out of my chair. And while I engage in them, my brain turns off from work mode, but my body gets the activity that it needs. So leisure activities, running is one of my leisure activities. Obviously, engaging in live music is another one of my leisure activities. Travel is a leisure activity. These are pursuits that feed me creatively. My balance, maintaining balance in my life as a creative is not just about work and rest. It's about work, rest, and leisure. Plus, if you write, leisure activities give you so much fuel for your writing life, especially for writing fiction. The people you meet, the scenarios you observe, living is part of the writing process. We write from life. And therefore, the more types of activities you're engaging in as a person, the more fuel you have for your writing life. After considering your work-life balance, really, it just comes down to knowing what inspires you versus what drains you and making sure that you, to the extent that you can, you limit your draining activities. Some we can't limit. They're part of the life that our Creator has given us in this present time. But if we know we have a draining season and a draining period, we need to be even more intentional about building in activities and pursuits that inspire us. Here's how I discovered what inspires me. I'm an extrovert and I love people. It's one of the reasons that as a creative, I work actively with other creators. I coach writers, I run coaching programs and networks, and I love people and I love engaging with them. So I thought, how can I build people into my life? If I'm a work from home writer who pursues a solitary craft, how can I build people into my life? Obviously, through friendship. I'm involved in my church. I sing in a big choir. I go to coffee shops once a week. And yes, I do a little eavesdropping. I also love to be outside. Being outside fuels my creativity. There's something about being in creation that brings me not only closer to my creator, but closer to my own creative self. So I go on hikes, I go running, I love to travel and see other parts of the world. And of course, I consider museums and places with a lot of art and beauty, I consider that part of outside, even though some of it is inside buildings. Hugely inspirational for my creativity. And then taking in media, music, musicals, TV, movies, books, all of these things inspire me creatively because I get to see what other storytellers are doing and learn from them and be inspired by them. Now, 6 steps to avoid creative burnout. First of all, pay attention to rhythms and learn from them. Second, keep lists of what fuels you versus what drains you. And this can change over time. Certain things I enjoyed that hyped me up when I was in my 20s. Now, at the age of 46, I think I might physically pass away if I engaged in some of those. So keep lists for this phase in your life of what fuels you versus what drains you. Also, drop whatever you can to make room in your life for what you really want. There are some things we cannot drop. We have responsibilities at certain points in our lives that are it's what God has planned for us at that phase in our life. I understand that. But sometimes we just get in these patterns and these rhythms and routines, and we forget we're allowed to quit certain things. So take some time to take stock of your life and say, what are some things that are not life-giving to me in this season and are not vital? They're not necessary. Is there anything I can drop in order to make room for things that I need in order to stay creatively inspired? Intentionally build sustainable refueling periods into your regular rhythms and schedules. Maybe you can't do this once a week like I do. Maybe it's once a month. Maybe it's once a quarter. But if you're not intentional about it, weeks can pass, months can pass, years can pass without intentional creative refueling. And that is a recipe for burnout. So build intentionality into your schedule. Consider making big picture changes to your life. You may need to move. You may need to change your relationships. Big picture changes are possible. I don't care how old you are. I don't care how long you've been in your current phase of life. If you decide to pursue writing, pursue the creative life, and develop the gift and the craft that the creator has put in you, you can make big changes to make that happen. And then finally, discuss these matters with other creatives. Part of what I taught you today, obviously, I've experienced firsthand, but other things I've learned from being around other people who work in the creative arts, other writers, other musicians, other people who create and bring new life and new things into the world. I can learn from them, learn what works for them, and then experiment with it. One big red flag is if a writer or a creative tells you, here's what you need to do, and then talks as if their own personal experience is a template that everyone else can copy. If you hear me saying anything that sounds that way today, that's unintentional. My whole goal is to show you the approach that has worked for me, and then said, okay, improvise within that structure, play around. I love engaging with people. Some of the things that I do would make an introvert want to hide in a closet forever. I understand that. So figure out the principles underneath what I'm saying, and then figure out a plan based on those principles that could work for you, and you could wind up avoiding long-term creative burnout. And if you are a writer and a creative who is getting ready to work on a long-term project, and you want to learn more about how to engage in a more effective creative life, please go to the link in my bio, click through there. I put a lot of resources in the location where you're going to find when you click through that link. I also have a new program for nonfiction writers that I'm running right now. If you are interested in hearing what it takes to take an idea from concept to contract to publication, click through the link up there, send me a DM, send me the word START, and I'll send along a free training that can help you get started. All right, writers, see you on the other side.